When Edgar Lungu was still alive, Chishimba Kambwili once made shocking remarks about HH and the Tonga community. Words that sparked anger, controversy, and heated debate. Now, after Lungu's death, those same words have resurfaced, and Zambia is once again divided. Why are these remarks being brought back now? And what do they mean for the country's fragile political climate? Stay with us, because what you're about to hear will shake you. After the death of Edgar Lungu, old remarks made by Chishimba Kambwili about President Hakainde Hichilema, HH, and the Tonga community have resurfaced, sparking outrage and debate across Zambia. In this video, we uncover the shocking words Kambwili said in front of Lungu, why these remarks are resurfacing now, after Lungu's death, how the Tonga issue has been used in Zambia's politics, what this means for HH, the UPND, and Zambia's future. This is more than just old words, it's a reminder of the deep divisions in Zambian politics. The forgotten speech. Some words are spoken, forgotten, and buried in time. Others linger, waiting for the moment when history brings them back to life. In Zambia, one such speech has re-emerged. And it belongs to Chishimba Kambwili. Years ago, Kambwili stood before a crowd and spoke words that many dismissed as another episode of fiery politics. They were directed at Hakainde Hichilema, then the leader of the opposition, and at the Tonga people. Words that many considered divisive, even dangerous. At the time, the moment passed. Lungu was in power, the political winds favored him, and Kambwili's words were overshadowed by the noise of elections, rallies, and the daily battles of Zambian politics. The country moved on, or so it seemed. But history has a way of reopening old wounds. When former President Edgar Lungu died, the nation entered a period of mourning. Yet in the quiet of reflection, something unexpected happened. Kambwili's forgotten words resurfaced. They spread across social media, radio call-ins, and political debates. Suddenly, the past felt uncomfortably present. Why now? Some say it was deliberate, a resurfacing meant to discredit Kambwili at a sensitive time. Others believe it was inevitable, because words like those never truly disappear. They linger, tucked away, until the right moment pulls them back into the spotlight. For many Zambians, the shock was not just in remembering what was said, but in realizing how much those words still resonate. The speech was not only about HH or the Tongas. It was about the fragile threads holding Zambia's unity together. It was about how quickly tribal politics can turn into national wounds. And it left a burning question. How much influence did those words have on Zambia's journey? Did they help shape the environment that allowed division to grow? Or were they simply one man's outburst, amplified by history? As Edgar Lungu's death reshaped the political stage, Kambwili's old speech became more than a memory, it became a test. A test of how Zambia would deal with its past, and whether it would confront tribal politics head-on, or let them quietly poison the present. The forgotten speech is forgotten no longer. And this is only the beginning. Because in the next episode, we dive deeper into the very wound that speech touched, the heart of Zambia's greatest challenge. A question that has divided generations, the tribal question. The tribal question. Every nation has wounds it would rather hide. For Zambia, that wound is tribalism. And when Kambwili's old words resurfaced after Edgar Lungu's death, they tore open scars that had never fully healed. Kambwili's fiery remarks about Hakainde Hichilema and the Tonga people were not just insults. They were a reflection of something deeper, the suspicion, rivalry, and prejudice that quietly runs through Zambian politics. For decades, leaders have spoken of unity. One Zambia, one nation. The motto is repeated in schools, on banners, in official speeches. But beneath the slogan lies a truth few admit. Tribal identity still shapes politics, loyalty, and even opportunity. When Kambwili spoke, he did more than criticize HH. He played into the old divisions that some politicians have used as weapons to win elections. By framing HH as a Tonga leader rather than a national figure, Kambwili wasn't just attacking one man. He was questioning whether Zambia could rise above tribal politics at all. And that question is what haunts Zambia today. For some, Kambwili's words confirmed what they already feared, that no matter how much progress the nation makes, tribalism lingers like a shadow. For others, the speech was a wake-up call, a reminder that words have the power to divide a nation as easily as they can inspire it. The danger of tribal politics is not just in the words spoken, but in what they leave behind. Families whisper about it at dinner tables. Communities carry grudges for generations. And politicians, knowingly or not, exploit those cracks to secure votes. What makes the resurfacing of Kambwili's speech so powerful is not just its content, but its timing. In the wake of Lungu's death, when Zambia should be reflecting on legacy and unity, the words force the nation to confront a question it cannot escape. Is Zambia truly united, or is unity just a fragile illusion? The tribal question is not about Kambwili alone. It is about every leader who has stood on a stage and chosen to exploit difference rather than build bridges. It is about every election shaped more by ethnicity than by policy. And it is about a people who must decide whether to keep repeating the cycle or to break it once and for all. Because in the end, tribal politics is not just about who wins power. It is about what kind of Zambia survives. And as we will see in the next episode, one man who carried the weight of these words and the fire of these divisions was Hakainde Hichilema himself. His story is not just of survival, but of resilience. Welcome to HH in the Crossfire. HH in the Crossfire. Before he was president, Hakainde Hichilema was a man under siege. For nearly 2 decades, he faced not just political rivals, but a storm of insults, accusations, and ridicule. And at the heart of that storm was one recurring theme: tribalism. Chishimba Kambwili's remarks about HH and the Tonga people were not the first of their kind, but they struck deeper than most. They painted HH as a leader for one tribe, not a leader for the nation. And in Zambia, that kind of labeling is more than political rhetoric. It is a weapon. HH stood in the crossfire of 2 battles. On one side, he was the opposition leader fighting against a ruling system determined to keep him out of power. On the other, he was branded as a symbol of tribal division, no matter how many times he preached national unity. Every campaign, every rally, every appearance, the words hung in the air. Can a Tonga lead Zambia? It wasn't just a question, it was a challenge to his legitimacy, a way of sowing doubt in the hearts of voters. But here is where the story takes a twist. Instead of breaking him, the insults hardened him. Instead of silence, HH chose persistence. He kept returning to the ballot again and again, even when defeat seemed inevitable. With every election loss, he gained resilience. With every insult, he sharpened his message of unity. By the time 2021 arrived, HH was no longer just an opposition leader. He had become a symbol of endurance. And when Zambians finally handed him victory, the triumph carried more weight than numbers on a tally sheet. It was a rejection of the old narrative that tribal identity should define leadership. Yet, the scars remain. The echoes of Kambwili's words still follow HH into State House. For his critics, those words remain a weapon, ready to be used whenever politics grows tense. For his supporters, they are a reminder of how far he has come, and how fragile unity still is. HH's story in the crossfire is not just about survival. It is about transformation. How a man who was branded by tribal politics turned that label into fuel for his rise. But his journey cannot be separated from the man who once sat quietly as these divisions deepened, Edgar Lungu. Did the former president benefit from silence? Or did he simply fail to act? In our next episode, we uncover the other half of this story, the Lungu connection. The Lungu connection. Every political storm has 2 figures, the one who speaks and the one who remains silent. In the saga of Kambwili's words about HH and the Tonga people, the silence belonged to Edgar Lungu. When Kambwili delivered his fiery remarks, Zambia waited for a response from the man at the top. Would the president condemn the speech? Would he defend national unity? Or would he remain silent, letting the fire burn? What followed was a silence that spoke louder than words. For some, that silence was strategic. Kambwili was a powerful ally at the time, a man whose sharp tongue could weaken opponents and rally supporters. By not condemning him, Lungu allowed the rhetoric to circulate freely, framing HH not just as an opposition leader, but as a tribal figure. It was a political weapon that could not be wielded openly by the president himself, but one that served his interests nonetheless. For others, Lungu's silence was complicity. To them, his failure to act showed a willingness to let divisions deepen, so long as they secured his grip on power. Tribalism, in this view, became less of a threat and more of a tool. But the silence had consequences. It allowed the idea of a tribal HH to take root in public discourse. It normalized attacks that questioned not his policies, but his identity. And it created a dangerous precedent, that words dividing a nation could be tolerated, even when spoken by senior figures. Yet there is another perspective worth considering. Lungu may not have spoken out because he understood the volatility of the issue. Perhaps he feared that condemning Kambwili publicly would only inflame tensions further. Perhaps his silence was not approval, but avoidance, a leader trying to contain a fire by starving it of oxygen. Whichever version is true, history judges silence harshly. Because when a leader fails to defend unity, the cracks left behind only widen. Now, after Lungu's death, that silence has been thrown back into the national conversation. Was he a strategist, allowing tribal rhetoric to weaken his rivals? Or was he a leader who failed to confront a danger that now haunts Zambia's future? The answer may never be fully known. But what is clear is this: Kambwili's words carried weight not just because they were spoken, but because they were allowed to echo unchecked. And those echoes would not stay confined to speeches or rallies. They would spill into the streets, the radios, the homes of ordinary Zambians. In the next episode, we explore how Kambwili's words traveled beyond the stage, igniting debate across Lusaka and beyond. Welcome to The Echo in Lusaka. The Echo in Lusaka. Words do not remain on podiums. They travel. They echo. And when Kambwili's divisive remarks about HH and the Tonga people resurfaced after Lungu's death, the echo was loudest in Lusaka. It began quietly, an old video clip shared online, a quote pulled from the archives, a memory reignited in the age of social media. Within hours, the city was alive with debate. Radios buzzed with callers, each with their own version of history. WhatsApp groups flooded with voice notes, arguments, and anger. Street corners became stages, where strangers debated the past as though it had just happened yesterday. The capital was divided. For some, Kambwili's words confirmed their deepest fears, that tribal politics was not gone, only hidden beneath layers of polite silence. They spoke of the danger of letting leaders use ethnicity as a weapon, of how those words had once poisoned campaigns and could do so again. For others, the resurfacing felt like a trap. Why bring back the past now, during a moment of mourning? Was this a political move meant to shame Kambwili, or to weaken his allies in the post-Lungu landscape? To them, the timing was too sharp to be coincidence. But whether deliberate or organic, the result was the same. The city could not stop talking. Markets buzzed with rumors. Taxi drivers debated with passengers. University students dissected the meaning behind the words, arguing whether tribal politics was Zambia's greatest threat or merely an exaggerated tool of the elites. In compounds and neighborhoods, people recalled how elections had once split families, how votes were often cast not on ideas, but on surnames. The echo was not just about what Kambwili had said. It was about what his words represented. They became a mirror, forcing Lusaka to confront what many had tried to forget, that beneath the slogans of "One Zambia, One Nation," suspicion and division still lurked. And in that echo, a warning grew louder. If old words could spark new debates so quickly, what would happen when the next election came? Would the wounds heal, or would they be torn open once more? In Lusaka, the past was no longer the past. It was alive. It was loud. And it demanded answers. But echoes are not harmless. They carry consequences. Consequences measured not in debates, but in power, opportunity, and trust. In the next episode, we trace those consequences. How much has Zambia already lost to the politics of division? And how high is the price when unity becomes a slogan, rather than a reality? This is The Cost of Division. The cost of division. Division is not free. Every careless word, every tribal slogan, every whispered insult has a cost. And in Zambia, the price of division has been paid in ways too many ignore. It begins with elections. When politics is framed through tribe, ballots are no longer choices of policy or vision. They become identity tests. Who is one of us? Who is the other? This has robbed Zambia of the chance to debate real issues, jobs, education, healthcare, replacing them with questions of bloodline and region. The cost is measured in lost opportunities, in leaders chosen for loyalty rather than competence. But the price does not end there. Division bleeds into the economy. Investors watch instability closely. When rumors of tribalism spread, when speeches are laced with exclusion, confidence shrinks. Who will invest in a nation unsure of its unity? Every careless remark echoes far beyond Lusaka. It reaches London, Johannesburg, Beijing, Washington. Division costs growth. Division costs trust. The social fabric also suffers. Communities that once lived side by side begin to see each other differently. A neighbor becomes a rival. A friend becomes a stranger. Families split over political allegiances. Churches whisper about who belongs and who does not. Even marriages, once symbols of Zambia's cross-cultural unity, feel the strain of suspicion. The cost is measured in silence, in the conversations that no longer happen across tribe and region. Then there is the hidden cost, talent wasted. How many brilliant young Zambians never got a chance because of where they were born, or because of the name they carried? How many voices were silenced before they could even speak? Tribal politics does not just divide, it shrinks a nation's future. It ensures that the best ideas are never heard, the best leaders are never tested, the best builders are never given tools. And perhaps the greatest cost is the erosion of one Zambia, one nation. This motto, once a proud shield against division, becomes a hollow slogan when leaders and citizens alike fail to live it. The dream of Kenneth Kaunda, a nation built on unity, is replaced with suspicion. And suspicion, once planted, grows deep roots. Zambia is still standing, but the cost of division has weakened its foundation. And as the country enters new political storms, the question is no longer whether division is dangerous. The question is how much more Zambia can afford to lose before unity becomes impossible to rebuild. In the next episode, we return to the man at the center of the storm. Kambwili's words were not just echoes of the past, they became tools in his battle for survival. This is the Political Chessboard. The Political Chessboard. Politics is rarely about what is true. More often, it is about what is useful. And for Chishimba Kambwili, tribal politics was not just a belief, it was a weapon, sharpened for survival. Kambwili was no stranger to controversy. Fiery, loud, unfiltered, he thrived in confrontation. But beneath the public outbursts was a careful calculation. He understood that in Zambia's political arena, power was not won in polite debates. It was wrestled from rivals, using whatever tools could cut deepest. Tribal rhetoric became one such tool. On the chessboard of Zambian politics, every move mattered. When he attacked Hakainde Hichilema and the Tonga people, Kambwili was not merely insulting, he was mobilizing. His words were designed to rally certain voters, to lock them into fear of the other side. It was a risky move, yes. But to Kambwili, it was strategy. Divide the board, control one side, and weaken the opponent before the real game begins. But strategy comes with consequences. Every insult he hurled created ripples, not just in Lusaka's press conferences but in the villages, townships, and markets where ordinary Zambians live. What he saw as a calculated move, many heard as truth. The chessboard extended beyond parliament, it reached into homes and hearts. At times, Kambwili's tactics worked. His fiery speeches gave him visibility, making him a champion to some who felt excluded or ignored. His words carried the energy of a populist fighter, a man unafraid to speak what others only whispered. On the chessboard, he gained pawns and positioned knights. He looked powerful. Yet the same weapon that gave him power also weakened him. As elections drew near, the stigma of tribalism became harder to erase. Opponents used his own words against him. Allies distanced themselves. Even within the patriotic front, Kambwili's outbursts became liabilities. His bishops and rooks began to fall. The chessboard of politics is unforgiving. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the whole game collapses. For Kambwili, the tribal card was both his strongest weapon and his fatal weakness. It won him attention but cost him credibility. It made him a headline but not a statesman. And so the question emerges, was this brilliance or self-destruction? Did Kambwili misread the game entirely, or did he know that survival in Zambia's politics requires playing with fire, even if it burns you in the end? In the next episode, we step into the fire itself, the storm of outrage that erupted after Kambwili's words resurfaced following Lungu's death. This is the Public Backlash. The Public Backlash. When Edgar Lungu died, Zambia entered a moment of mourning. But mourning is not silence. It is memory. And in that fragile silence, Kambwili's old words came crashing back like thunder. The resurfacing of his remarks about HH and the Tonga people struck the nation like a match in dry grass. What might have been a forgotten controversy reignited with fury. Social media turned into a battlefield. Facebook pages, Twitter threads, and WhatsApp groups exploded with debates that blended grief with outrage. For many Zambians, the timing was unbearable. Why should such divisive words resurface now, when the nation was supposed to unite in reflection? To them, the remarks were not just an insult to HH or to Tongas, they were an insult to Zambia itself. They reopened wounds that had never fully healed. Public opinion hardened quickly. Callers on radio shows demanded apologies. Civil society groups reminded the country of its fragile unity. Commentators spoke of the danger of letting such language go unchallenged, especially in a moment when the nation was watching itself so closely. But not everyone saw it the same way. Some of Kambwili's defenders argued that he was being unfairly targeted. They claimed his words were being weaponized by rivals, that his past mistakes were being exaggerated to bury his political relevance once and for all. For them, the backlash was less about unity and more about political elimination. Yet, even within his circle, unease grew. The backlash was too strong to ignore. Politicians who once stood by him began to distance themselves. Allies went silent. No one wanted to be dragged into the storm. And then came the ordinary Zambians, the real voice of the backlash. In markets, people spoke with anger about how leaders toy with tribal divisions for personal gain. In homes, parents worried about what such rhetoric was teaching their children. For students and young professionals, the backlash was not only about Kambwili, it was about the kind of Zambia they wanted to inherit, one where tribe is no longer a weapon. The public backlash was not just noise. It was a lesson. A reminder that Zambians were listening, that words have consequences, that unity is not something to be played with for political gain. And yet, as the storm grew louder, so did the whispers. If the people had judged him guilty, what about the party he once served? Could the Patriotic Front escape the shadow of his words?